apart, though you know it wasn't written for you. But tell me, how can you stand there with your broken heart, ashamed of playing the fool? But one thing can lead to another. It doesn't take any sacrifice. Oh, Father.
1 in 10 Utah kids face hunger, but you can feed Utah by leaving a bag of non-perishable food donations on your doorstep by 9 a.m. on Saturday, March 16th. Help the Utah Food Bank, Macy's Grocery, and Lynn's fight hunger statewide. Learn more at utahfoodbank.org/feedutah. It's spring football, PK. You can tell because it's March Madness. The two always seem to overlap. And sure enough, the Cougars have started. The Utes are starting. And the Aggies will start. 1 week after another. Here they come. The Utes start in spring practice today. What's going to be their story come January? Do that again. You can't. You just summoned the proper amount of skepticism right there.
Skepticism, anticipation of joy. Are you kidding me?
Nope, that's not what David has. Injuries and more injuries. Maybe look at your training staff. If only that had occurred to Kyle Whittingham. If only he thought about that.
Your training staff?
Yes.
Maybe look at Cam Rising's decision to take on 14 tacklers against Penn State.
Training staff could have told you, don't do that.
Yes.
They were over on the other side like, no, slide.
Not those guys.
Not the big, fast guys.
I can remember sitting in the press box at where you have the ultimate view of the game, right? And that's why I came along out of that press box that first game in the Rose Bowl and saying this Stroud kid is really going to be something. Because when you sit up there, you can really see everything. It's why the coaches sit up there, right? Obviously. You just can't see as much on the field. You can't see as much on TV. And I could literally remember him going, thinking to myself, get down, get down, get down, get down, get down. And he didn't. And then we know what happened. He's missed a whole year because of not getting down. What the crap does that have to do with the training staff? He needs to be smart. And I argued with him last August, or was it July? Last July in Vegas about getting down. I mean, we were literally arguing back and forth because he came media day. And he thought I was talking about the play where he needed the first down against SC. And I was talking about, I was talking about the Rose Bowl thing. You did not, in that circumstance, you did a first down wasn't at hand. You weren't going to lose control of the ball. So he's got to play smarter. And we all appreciate his competitiveness and his desire because I think he's a big-time gamer. But it wasn't smart, and he paid the price to have the surgery and all that stuff that caused all these issues, right, in that play. So the training staff, I am not so sure that had anything to do with that. I mean, every football team suffers injuries. That's just a fact. I mean, this is the nature of the sport. They had the one there, and they haven't had a backup ready to go. And I don't know that I could blame it on them. How many teams have a backup ready to go? I mean, you look at the Cougars, they went 0-4 when what's-his-face went down.
Mike says, Keaton Slovis, Mike says Utah will still be playing in January. See, now we're back to the conversation we had in the last segment about the Jazz. Hope, PK. Hope springs eternal. Now, hope could be disappointment delayed.
Yeah, well, but if you're playing in January,
you've had a lot of winning.
Yeah, certainly. You will have won a whole lot. I guess this coming year, you don't even have to necessarily win the conference to get in.
No, but they will have to win playoff games at this point.
Playoff games, yes. Obviously, yes. That's a fact. Yeah. So you're right, but you don't have to win the conference. And I still want to say that winning a conference is a big thing. I said it for the Aggies on Saturday.
Yep.
They didn't need to get where they want to go, but
it's still cool that they did it.
And I think there's something to be said for that. And it's the same thing I've said in basketball. You play for 2 months, and everybody plays, and then if you're the best record, you won something. And so you should cut down the nets. And I think that it's the same thing for college football. You're basically playing for 2 months too. October and November. You got a couple of games maybe in September. With the scheduling, how the calendar works out. And there's something to be said for that. You don't necessarily need it to accomplish your goal. That's the new world. So be it. But yeah, then you're going to have to win playoff games. Is this team capable of getting to the playoff? Yes, I think they are. Is it a slam dunk? No, I don't even think it's close to a slam dunk.
Not a slam dunk. But how about the probability? Is it more likely than not?
No,
I
would say no.
I think playing in January is not likely.
Well, I don't know who they're going to play, so I can't say that. Who knows what's going to happen there?
Get to January, and I haven't seen dates. I don't know if they're out, but I'm assuming that means you're in the semifinals.
I think I think it could be done.
I think it could be done too. That's why I said it's more likely than not they're done before January. Is it possible? Is there a chance? Sure. You're saying there's a chance.
Well, you're going to say that about every team except Georgia, Ohio State, the usual suspects.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the usual suspects are probably going to be in the semis.
Well, yeah, it's like the West Coast Conference. Gonzaga's playing St. Mary's tonight. Well, of course they are for the title in the West Coast Conference, right? That's like a no-brainer. Yes, absolutely. And the others, there's like 3 or 4 or 5 schools there. I would throw Texas. They seem to be back right now into that mix, and they've been in that mix over time. So you got that going on here. I think that as far as getting to the playoff, I can see it, but I don't know that I give the Utes an overwhelming percentage versus the rest of the conference.
I get your logic there. Too many things can happen in football. As we saw last year, injuries can happen. So to say that they've got more than a 50% chance, I'm not sure how many berths the conference is going to be allowed to get. It's as you love to point out, it's a committee and people are picking. So is the conference going to get 1 or 2 bids? I'd probably lean towards 2. I would think that's the most likely number. But I might lean towards, if I'm wrong, 1 might be more likely than 3. 3 seems a little on the high end. Maybe it'll play out, though.
I would agree with that. But I'm going into the fact that I've never seen these teams play each other. I have no basis of a foundation on how it goes.
Yeah, and you've always had the picks that you've made in the past, and all of your experience, and all of our experience for that matter too, has been assessing leagues where almost everybody plays each other. And now you're going to have bizarro tiebreakers where teams didn't play each other, and schedules that one schedule can be much easier than the other. And we've started to dip our toe into that, and we see how just missing 2 teams can really shape a conference race. And now these leagues are getting so big, man, if they do away with divisions, which it seems like pretty much everybody has either done it or will do it, then you're going to have teams not playing 6, 7, 8 teams, depending on the size of the league. It's going to make things really hard to predict because a bunch of teams aren't going to see each other.
Right.
And Georgia and Ohio State, they'll probably be there at the end. That's the reason to pick against really almost anybody in the country missing the semis is that those 2 make it. So everybody else in the country is playing for 2 spots in the semis. And you're right. If you put everybody else in the field, you'd put Texas ahead of most people in the field. Michigan's got to rebuild. Alabama's got a new coach, except Alabama's got a really good coach. And it might take them a year or 2, but they're going to be making deep playoff runs, I would think. We just watched what he did at Washington, so that took a couple years.
We'll see.
But he got there.
The resources haven't gotten any worse. Right? They've probably got more. But I've just never seen Oklahoma State play Utah. I've never seen Utah go to Oklahoma State. I've never been to Oklahoma State. I've been to Oklahoma, but I haven't been to Oklahoma State. So I just don't know. So I want to have a little bit of some evidence just to see how it goes. Then they got to travel the end of the season all the way over to Central Florida. And, we got a little bit of a taste of Central Florida, but I don't know enough about them still. I don't know that you can know enough about in just one season and make these assumptions going forward. Where before, it seems like now, at least for the next couple of years, every year I'm starting from ground zero, so to speak. Where in the Pac-12, Pac-10, no, I was building upon it. Going into it, I already had a 75% knowledge of these teams, right? And plus these coaches, too, they go into these teams where they've played in the conferences that they've been in. To a large extent, they had a 3-4 year history on those individual players because they've been exposed to them basically since the 10th grade, because they were potentially scouting them, deciding, are we going to recruit them? Are we going to offer them? Well, in order to decide whether you're going to offer somebody, you got to have some film on the guy. You got to be able to know some people and talk to people about the kid, blah, 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 all that stuff. I wonder how much of that is happening now when you play Baylor, you play Oklahoma State and Houston, you know what I mean? Iowa State. How many overlaps were there? And it always amazed me that these coaches knew of so many of the players on the other team because they brought them in on an official visit. They brought them in on an unofficial visit, whatever it might be. So they've been around them for so many years before they finally get to college.
Even if they weren't recruiting, they still knew their high school coaches and still talked about them when they make small talk on a recruiting trip, as they make small talk to build recruiting relationships that are going to later on. They just talk football and they talk about players, and so they know.
Absolutely.
They know.
They go to the schools and talk to those coaches. My wife sees these coaches all the time.
Right. And sometimes she has to tell the coach, I got to go back to work now.
Yeah, they talk to them.
Right. Well, building relationships, find out information. But when the Utes were in the Mountain West and no, threat at that point to recruit head-to-head with the Texas Longhorns, Kyle still knew Texas's roster and knew that Texas could beat USC if they met up in a bowl game. Mid-season. I remember him telling me that. I couldn't believe it. And he totally called it. USC will beat everybody except maybe Texas if they run into him in a bowl game. How did he know that much about Texas's roster? That was at the point they were still recruiting Mountain West kids and knew they couldn't even talk to those kids. It was just a waste of time.
Right, and I think that we're underestimating to a good degree how much talent Utah lost. I think we would have seen it in 2019 to 2020, but we didn't really have a 2020 season, right? It was a waste of time. And they lost so much talent on the defensive side off of that 2019 team. The next man up, that's a nice catchy phrase, and it's tough guy mentality, and you got to have that.
But you can't have another. You can't with the best players. You're just not going to have those guys 2 and 3 deep.
Right, and we didn't get a fair evaluation because as I said, there was basically no 2020 season, right? So to an extent, it didn't even count. And if you try to tell Kyle that it counted, you better be in your car with your foot on the gas. Because he's going to come running after you, right? Because he insists that season doesn't count. And I agree with him. So we never really saw. It's like those guys, the Clark Phillips of the world, they got 5 practice games. And so then the next year, then they had been in the at least in the program for a couple years. By the time the games count, we got back to the regular season, the normal season probably is a better word. And here, I just think, man, they're losing some, I believe, really, really good NFL talent. Now, that's not to say that they don't have guys to replace them, but I think they'll take a hit. But I also think that to an extent, maybe it'll be offset. Like, for instance, they don't lose linebackers, so they may not be as good in the secondary, but they're going to be way better at linebacker.
Yeah, that 2020
right?
season.
And it may take some time.
That 2020 season was also impacted by a quarterback injury to their starting quarterback that we probably didn't fully appreciate at the time because we hadn't seen how well he played, and they ended up going 3-2 in 5 games. But maybe they would have been a 5-7 or 7-5 team or whatever over 12 games because they'd already taken one injury, and what if there'd been another? But it was a bizarro season.
Yeah. So they were, in a sense, they weren't on the clock. And I just don't know that you could replace a Cole Bishop and a Vaki and Jonah Ellis so easily.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to do it, and that's what you want. You want to have to replace NFL talent because that meant you were pretty good at those positions, which they were. How's that going to play out? Now, that's not to say that it's going to be a major problem. Not really sure to the level because I got to see these kids out there. Then I combine it with a bunch of opponents that I've never seen them play. I still like their chances, no doubt about it, but I like 2 or 3 other teams' chances also.
You got new coaches, you got the transfer portal, and then you start looking at teams and then you realize, oh, wait, they're not going to play that team, so what does it matter? But you don't have the schedules down for, well, who are the other guys not going to play? Is somebody out there who we think is decent really got a super soft schedule, which you may not even know yet because you don't know that the 2 toughest games they got on their schedule, they're not going to face the starting quarterbacks or the defensive end who, wreaks havoc, and you don't know. You don't know until you get there.
But I'm looking forward to that first league game. September 21st, I think it is, at Oklahoma State, if I remember, and I'm 99% positive I do remember, because they got that Ollie Garden kid, that Oklahoma State running back, and Utah, Whittingham would give up years of his life if it meant we stuff the run. I mean, that's who he is, right? And how is Oklahoma State going to do? They got the really good running back. Kansas has got a really good – well, they don't play Kansas, so I guess that doesn't count. Maybe they can get them in the final game, but I don't believe they got Kansas in the regular season. Just how's that going to be? I think that first game right off the bat will tell us a fair amount. I'm looking forward to that. I expect that the Utes, as they normally do, go 3-0 in non-conference. We know they got SUU, Baylor, and then they got to go up to Logan. But then that first game at Oklahoma State, I love that game. That's a tough game right off the bat. They come out of there with a convincing win. Yeah. I mean, and if they lose, that doesn't really matter. They lost that first game to SC a couple years back and still went to the Rose Bowl, right? So it's not like it's devastating. But I just like, we know Kyle demands that you stop the run. And Oklahoma State, that's what they want to do. So that's a good indicator, I think, of how the season's going to come and how it'll be. And I'm looking forward to that very first game.
Well, assuming stuff months out, I assume if they get that, that's a great road win. I wonder if you will hear either on game day when they're picking the game or whoever the announcers are who are broadcasting the game, early on when they're setting the scene, this is a potential Big 12 title game preview. Is somebody going to drop that? Because,
I think so.
Yeah, because it is, which is why you're getting all fired up about it now.
I believe it could be.
Yeah.
Yes.
This could be the toughest game on the Utes Big 12
we would say
schedule.
that.
Yeah.
It very well could be. Yeah, it could. Absolutely, it could be. But then there'll be 1 or 2 surprise teams down the road. Iowa State was a surprise team last year.
No doubt.
Can they do it? I mean, I saw Shedeur Sanders put on social media for Colorado. Every day he wakes up, people be hating on them. All right, play us against the world. I mean, I don't think about Colorado at all this time of year. Absolutely not. And maybe they'll be substantially better. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see, because they got to play Colorado after they play BYU. And BYU, we always know, is an emotional game. So maybe there's a little bit of a letdown for the Utes, and they have to go over to Colorado the following week playing BYU the week before. Maybe so. Well, I hope Shedeur Sanders is healthy the whole time to see what they can do.
It's so weird. For like 50 years, BYU or Colorado has been the team at the end of Utah's schedule. And now they're in a league with both of them, and neither one is at the end of the schedule. What are they doing flying to UCF for the last game? How are they not ending up with BYU or Colorado? TV? Is that what we should say?
I don't know how they did that.
Yeah. DJ and PK, it's 97.
Not sure what went into that.
Yeah, it's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up in the 9 o'clock hour, Mark Durant, BYU basketball radio analyst, is talking Big 12 tournament. And Al Jefferson, former Utes center, joins us. It's the 2010s night for the Jazz as they host the Celtics and reflect on the 5 decades of Jazz basketball. We'll talk at Al at 9:30. We're giving away Jazz tickets to see the Atlanta Hawks March 15th at the Delta Center. That is on the other side of this break. Stay with us.